In this video, I'm going to demonstrate how to produce and edit nice product photos using a DIY setup and a mobile phone. You'll need a light source, something around 4000 kelvins for a nice white light, a tripod with a phone mount, some sheets of white paper, tape, scissors, and some baking paper. So this is the setup I'm using. I've got the phone on the tripod in front of a cube of the shelving unit. I'm using this as it does a good job of reflecting the light around the subject and helps to block out any ambient light from the room. Don't worry if you can't do the exact same. What's important here is being able to have the sheets of paper arranged at the back to create the curved infinity background. The light is directly in the middle, and you'll notice that I've added the baking paper over the light to diffuse it and soften the shadows. So here we are in the photo app. I'm using Adobe Lightroom. You can use whichever app you prefer. Just make sure that you're able to get a bit of manual control over the phone's camera. Now that you can see the subject and how it's framed in the image, you can adjust its position and the lighting so that it's lit in the desired way. I've set the apple very close to the curved background. This is so the shadow has less landscape to fall on and appears less pronounced. I'm also zooming in on the subject and squaring it up in the frame. Don't worry about the bits down the side. This will be cropped out in the final edit. So now it's time to take some photos. There are lots of adjustable settings, but I'm going to take the first photo of everything set to auto just to get a baseline. With that done, the first setting I'm going to adjust is probably one of the easiest. Using the three dots to bring up the menu, I'm adding a timer. This helps to limit the effects of any wobble from the tripod or the camera when you actually take the photo. Now I'm going to switch modes from auto to pro. In this mode, you can manually adjust the focal length, the white balance, the ISO, and the shutter speed. For this setup, I'm going to leave both the focal length and the white balance set as auto. I don't need any depth of field, and the automatic white balance gives us the closest true white for the background. I am going to adjust the ISO to get a little bit more exposure. To do this, first we need to lock the shutter speed by just opening up the option and setting it, and then making the adjustments to the ISO. Now we've got a few photos, we're ready to edit. Head over to the library in Lightroom and all of the photos will be there. They're arranged left to right, newest to oldest. This is the first image we took, and actually it looks pretty good. The background's quite white. This one was with the timer. The background on this is a little bit grayer. And finally we've got the one with the adjusted ISO. This looks a little bit washed out and overexposed, but I think with a bit of editing this will work quite well. The first adjustment I'm going to make is to crop the image and make the subject the focus. I'm also going to square it up in the middle of the frame so that it's nice and central. I should say now, when you make an edit to an image in Lightroom, there is a bit of a delay, and the image can look quite fuzzy until it renders and reloads. So for a moment you might think you've ruined it, but actually it's all good. It's worth remembering this when you're making edits and doing them in small increments so that you can actually observe the change that's happening. The next adjustment I'm going to make is in the lighting section. I'm adding a bit of contrast to make the subject stand out from the background. There's some glare on the front of the apple, so I'm adjusting the highlights down to try and reduce that. I'm also adjusting the whites up to keep the background as clean as possible. Next, in the color and temperature options, I want to reduce the slightly washed out appearance by bringing up the saturation and making the apple more colorful and vibrant. Finally, as is good practice with editing any image, I'm just increasing the sharpness and the detail. Here's the final image. We've got a nice amount of detail on a white plain background, and it was all done using a DIY setup and mobile phone.